Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Cryptid Iceberg. I know it's been a while since the last episode, and I apologize for that, but at the same time, it's funny to watch you suffer. The amount of people who keep asking where the series is at, and the people sending vaguely threatening DMs to me on Twitter, are encouraging, because it means you guys like this, and I really like it, so that's neat. I figured we'd give the series a pause for a while, because for one, I wanted to get some other video topics up, and also it gives time for people to catch up, so they can be here when a new episode drops. That being said, it has been a while. For example, my arch enemy and also friend Meat Canyon has since shown up and drawn this on the board since the last episode. So we're gonna leave that here until I have to write over into that direction, and then I'm immediately killing that guy. Also, my beautiful wife made this one, and I like it better. We've got a lot of cool ones to cover today. Some cryptids that I am super stoked to talk about, like the fearsome critters, which I'm now a major fan of, as well as some Loch Ness Monster clones that I'm definitely going to be mad about. So stay tuned for that. Oh yeah, also since the last episode, I figured out that while a shotgun mic sounds cool in theory, lapel mics are actually much better audio quality. So this is going to be very confusing for people watching through the entire compilation when that comes out, because the first 5 episodes are going to sound like I'm ordering at a drive-thru and then suddenly I'm in your house. With that, we're going to go ahead and get into the iceberg. Hopefully you're as excited to hear about it as I am to talk about it, and if you are, then stick around after the ad as we get into Tier 7. Before we continue talking about the things of nightmares, let's talk about another nightmare. Hackers. Because now is as scary of a time as ever, because recently, over 2.9 billion records were stolen from national public data. This breach includes info normally given to employers, private investigators, and anyone doing background checks, meaning everything from addresses to social security numbers have fallen into the wrong hands and have been released for free online. Despite throwing my face around on the internet, there's plenty of personal information I have that I don't want floating around online. And that's why I use today's sponsor, Aura. Aura alerts me if my phone number, social security number, or even my email shows up on the dark web. If anyone tries to use this information to access my accounts, they flag it and let me know right away. On top of that, Aura offers up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst happen. Not only that, but Aura offers several other internet safety tools like a VPN, scam call protection, transaction monitoring, and much more. Essentially, it's all of the internet protection you need in one place. The internet is great when the scares are where they should be. So worry less and let Aura help you have peace of mind when you browse online. And right now, there's never been a better time to get in on this offer, because right now, if you head to the link in the description at aura.com/Wendigoon, you'll be able to try Aura for 14 days absolutely free. That's right, 2 weeks free to test out Aura and see if any of your info got out in the recent leak, and from there, Aura can help you decide what to do next. Again, that's aura.com/Wendigoon to get in on this incredible offer today. Thank you all so much for watching the ad. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring the video. It really does mean the most. Hope you all check them out. Link is in the description, and we are back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. Tier 7 begins with the cave cow. The cave cow has often been described as a massive lizard covered in hair. Originating in Central America, these creatures were said to reach 10 feet in length and inhabit the caves deep within the jungles, hence their name. Sightings of the beast were first reported in the 1890s after a massive animal ripped apart the servant of a French naturalist. Due to their dark fur and white mane, along with their reported 3-toe footprint, many theorize the cave cow to be a still existent species of giant ground sloth. While it is cool that the story of the cave cow came from, again, a French naturalist who had a servant torn apart only to see an animal quickly dart into the weeds, which is like a cool setup for a story, the cave cow itself is pretty much just like a Komodo dragon. And I know Komodo dragons aren't native to Central America, but again, if it's a creature that exists somewhere in the world, I'm not super impressed by the same creature existing somewhere else in the world. I mean, maybe I am sometimes, but it's got to be like a really weird placement, like sewer alligators, right? Or if you had like, I don't know, a whale in the desert, that would impress me. But just another big lizard thing that lives in caves, I don't care that much. Also, I would put this at C tier because it's just kind of mid, but that is yet another mention of something that might be a giant ground sloth. which is like the 5th or 6th time that has happened at this point. And the ground sloth is quickly becoming my next Loch Ness monster because I'm tired of all these cryptids just being a ripoff of its design and everything. So for that, I am dropping it to D tier. But if this ground sloth thing keeps up, it will become an F tier qualification. After that, we have brownies. Also known as a broody, these short beings are effectively a household goblin. Legend has it that if the owner of a house leaves out milk when they go to bed, a brownie will appear and perform household chores and of course drink the milk while the owner sleeps. While this feature is beneficial, a brownie will just as easily become malevolent if it is offended or threatened. Stories of these creatures describe them as human or troll-like in appearance, and their influence has affected many corners of modern culture for centuries. Brownies appear in a lot of different mythical adaptations, the most famous of which being that they were more than likely the inspiration for the house elves in the Harry Potter series. But there's also weird places they pop up outside of that as well. Like for example, the Cleveland Browns, the NFL football team, their original mascot was a brownie. A lot of the stories around them are pretty fun too. Like if a respectful homeowner leaves out milk for the brownie, it will show up and happily clean everything. But say a group of guys trash a house the night before and then leave a cup of milk for a brownie this time, well now the brownie feels like it's being taken advantage of. So it will just make the mess worse or something like that. It's an interesting little corner of folklore that barely trots the line of it being a cryptid, and for that I can't put it very high on the list, but for being kind of cute, I won't throw it all the way at the bottom. So we'll call it a D tier. After that, we've got Specs. On March the 11th of 1959, Bob Wall was diving from his glass-bottomed tourist boat off the coast of Miami Beach, Florida. According to Wall, when he approached an underwater cave, he caught view of a terrifying beast. This animal, now known as Specs, was described as having a body over 5 feet in length and standing 3 feet off the ground on 8 long legs. A team of divers went to investigate the next day, but Specs was never seen again. Some believe Specs to be a massive spiny lobster, while others theorize it to be a living variation of the extinct sea scorpion. So Specs doesn't have a ton of lore around him because, again, it was only seen once, but I don't know, there's a charm to me about these only seen once cryptids. Because yeah, if there are creatures that were that elusive that had managed to turn away from humanity for so long, especially in the modern age, then it would be hard to find them. And sure, while Specs might be a giant species of lobster, maybe it's just something that looks like a giant species of lobster. And it leaves enough room in your mind to ask interesting questions. Plus, I think we can all agree that a giant underwater spider thing that's that large is pretty terrifying. So while at the end of the day, yes, big lobster, I think it's cool variation of big lobster, so I'm going to call it right in the middle at C tier. Next up, we've got the jangsanbeom. Once again, East Asia produces the most terrifying cryptids in this iceberg. The jangsanbeom is said to stalk the Jangsan Mountains of Busan, and the first recorded sightings of the monster begin in 2010. The terror is said to resemble a tiger or ground sloth in shape, but in a stature far larger than a man. It is covered in white hair that often obscures its furious face. The animal can mimic near anything, from train horns to scraping metal, to human voices, and even running water to whatever is needed to lure in its prey. Some ascribe a supernatural quality to the mimic. Regardless, it seems the legends of this man-eater will haunt the Jangsan Mountain for years to come. Something about the images of this cryptid like activate my fight or flight for some reason. Every time I see like those furious red eyes and like its putrid face, it freaks me out. That being said, I think the cryptid is really cool. I know I mentioned a ground sloth in that description because that's how other people describe it, so I mentioned it for the sake of clarity, but to me it really isn't a ground sloth. It's more of like a bear-wolf hybrid, if anything. And a lot of the stories around it make it seem more like a ghost or a spirit that haunts the mountains. And we've all heard stories, and we've mentioned a lot through the series, about mimics, things that can, sound like a woman screaming to get people to come closer. But I never thought about a mimic mimicking the sound of running water to try to bring in people that are thirsty and dehydrated. That's especially terrifying. That being said, there's not a ton of information about this cryptid. One of the only videos I could find on it was by a YouTube channel called Cryptids Across the Atlas, which you all should go check them out. They make great videos about cryptids and are highly underrated. But at least in the Western languages, I should say, there isn't a ton of info about them. And I wish there was more because I really like the concept and the idea. I can't quite throw it in A tier, again, just because I don't know a ton about it. But from what I do know, it's terrifying enough to be a B tier to me. How'd you look at that? It's the first one to make its way onto the second whiteboard. I am going to need more of these, I can already tell, but that's a problem for later. After that, we have a fun one, the Taku-he. It would not be wrong to describe the Taku-he as the Bigfoot of South Dakota. Translating from Lakota to literally, what is that? The original native legends describe Taku-he as a benevolent guardian of the woodlands, while modern legends depict it as a fearful man-killer. The first modern accounts began around the 1970s when a film crew discovered a massive footprint near Sika Hollow, and a local claimed to have seen the creature some nights prior. Humorously, there's another Lakota legend dubbed the Taku-he that describes a spirit in a suit coat, which has led to much confusion online and resulted in the hybrid cryptid, or in other words, Bigfoot in a top hat. So Taku-he itself, standard Bigfoot in a region. I do like the specific detail that it's a more benevolent creature. A lot of the times modern Bigfoot stuff is just like a crazy ape that kills people. So I like the idea of it being more of a spiritual guardian. That being said, the Taku-he is particularly funny because, again, the word just means what is that? So there's another thing called what is that, which is basically a ghost. And people online see the same name for both and be like, oh, Bigfoot must be wearing, you know, like an old 40s top hat and suit for some reason. While funny, still just kind of a Bigfoot clone, but unique enough that I'll call it right in the middle at C tier. Otherwise, I think it's a bit derivative, but the top hat is fun. I can already tell it's going to get to the point that if you have any similarities to the Loch Ness Monster, a ground sloth, or Bigfoot, it's F tier. I'm not there yet, but it's coming. I apologize for this next one in advance. I've heard a bunch of different recommendations of how to pronounce it. I'm going to go with the one that looks the most correct to me. So next up we have Qupqugiaq. 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 The Qupqugiaq. This creature is effectively a 10-legged polar bear. Anthropologist Diogenes first wrote of this creature during his stint with the Inuit people in the early 1900s. According to locals, other than its 6 extra legs and proclivity for violence, the bear centipede looked as any other polar bear, save for its size. The creature is so massive, Jennis said that its head alone is several feet wide. This super predator is said to make calls similar to a wounded animal in order to lure its prey, and given its size, its prey can be anything unfortunate enough to be found too far north. I don't know why, but polar bears have always been uniquely frightening to me. Like, sure, there's other predators on land that are scary, but there's something about the area that they prey over, that you have this massive ice tundra of nothing and completely hopeless chances of survival if you're not familiar with the region. And then just somewhere out there across the icescape, there is a thing that can smell you from miles away, that will beat you in any physical condition, and you just have to hope you don't run into it. So now take that concept and then make it like 5 times bigger and give it 6 more legs. I actually remember this one going around on TikTok a while back, funny enough. People were making like memes or edits about it, like the super polar bear that kills people, that are just on a really weird side of TikTok. I should also mention most stories of it feature the 6 extra legs, but in some, the name is ascribed to just a giant polar bear that, other than its size, looks like a regular polar bear. But the 6-legged polar bear is far more unique in my opinion, and I think pretty terrifying. So I'm gonna call it a B tier. I've seen a lot of you people meme on me online for putting like big fish and like big squid low on the list, and then praising things that are like big polar bear or big, I don't know, whatever else I've done in past episodes. And I get it, but at the same time, I don't care. If every 1 out of 5 creatures up here was a big polar bear, I'd get pretty tired of the big polar bear. It is the fatigue that makes me so mad at all the guys down here. And also, more importantly, it's my list. Grow up. And I will now further prove that point by praising another cryptid that is just animal but big. And that is the Dundas Island blackfly. Off the coast of British Columbia, Canada, lies Dundas Island. Upon this island, and said to exist in swarms, the Dundas Island blackfly is said to grow up to 5 inches in length and administer a tremendous bite. Not only do these flies contain venom, which is lethal in itself, but these bloodsuckers will not stop attacking their target until that target has been completely drained. Relegated to the island by some unknown means, the only hope of besting the swarm is to simply leave. So apparently Dundas Island does have a fly issue, like a documented problem with big flies, being a nuisance. So there is a local legend about some of the flies being really big and having the potential to kill you. I think that the story's fun enough. For one, you don't really think of flies as a scary, creepy threat, but if you suddenly made them really big, I bet you would. There's also room to imagine, there's not a lot of stories that nail down exactly how big the flies can become. In some depictions, it's like they're a few inches long, and in others, they're the size of like a cat. So whatever's most terrifying to you, just apply it. While I want to put it higher because I think giant bugs are a lot of fun, there's just not enough lore there to really build out something or to make it as interesting as like the reason I threw the giant polar bear up so high. So I'll call it a C tier. Like with the giant polar bear, it came from Inuit legend. It has all these stories, these relations to the area that make it especially terrifying. And the Dundas Island blackfly is like, there's flies in the area, and someone said, what if they're bigger? And someone else said, that's kind of cool, and that's how the cryptid happened. We're now moving on to one of my favorite ones from this tier, the Teakettler. Another of the fearsome critters, this creature keeps to the status quo with its whimsy. Very few have seen the Teakettler due to its shy nature, but many have heard its distinct call. As the name implies, the Teakettler sounds like a tea kettle's whistle, even capable of blowing out steam as if it were a tea kettle. Its appearance is vague due to a lack of sightings, as well as the fact that Teakettlers can only walk backwards due to rear-facing knees, causing confusion for any uninitiated tracker. But most depictions portray it as either a small dog or what can only be described as a living tea kettle. I am obsessed with the fearsome critters. I had heard of them before, but I wasn't familiar with most of them until I started this series, and now I've ordered both variations of the original collection, and you're going to get a video about it very soon because I need them in my blood. The Teakettler, just like all the other fearsome critters, is so fun because you can so easily see its application. Imagine there's a group of lumberjacks sitting around the fire, and one of them is trying to sneak and make some tea that he doesn't want to share with everyone else. So when someone points out to him, oh, did I hear a tea kettle? He's like, oh, well, it must have been that, the Teakettler. Yep, looks just like a tea kettle, and it's in the woods, yeah. And then, the yarn just runs itself from there. You have a couple guys out in the woods, and someone points at a pair of tracks and says it's a Teakettler. And when the younger guy of the camp goes to chase it, he comes back hours later exhausted, and you can say, oh, well, did I mention they walk backwards? It's just so much fun. It feels just mundane things in the woods with so much life. I love it. I can't get enough of these. I feel kind of bad if I put every single fearsome critter at A or S tier. I don't think I've put any of them below A tier, actually. Well, actually, I put the fur-bearing trout at B tier, and I'm pretty sure it originates as a fearsome critter, but maybe not. It's kind of similar to the whole Americana superstition. But other than that, yeah, I don't think I've put any below A, which I kind of don't like. I don't like the idea that if it's just a fearsome critter, my own bias is going to make it be an A tier. Actually, what am I talking about? It's my list. I can do whatever I want. Yeah, Teakettler is an A tier. If there's more fearsome critters that come later and all of them are still A tier, maybe I'll move the Teakettler down just because I think it's probably the weakest of the fearsome critters so far. But I mean, looking at the list, I think the Teakettler's more inventive and unique than stuff like, I don't know, the skunk ape or the Tennessee Wildman or whatever. I think it's more unique, but it also doesn't have the clout that those do. So I'll put it at B tier, fine. I don't know why that was such a struggle for me, but sure, I'll throw it at B tier. With that crisis out of the way, let's move on to the roamer. In the mountains of the Western Carolinas, a fierce guardian is said to stand watch over the land. According to legend, the roamer was once a stoic, peaceful keeper of the Appalachian foothills, yet as time passed and the customs that once esteemed it became uncommon folklore, the entity sought other means of preservation. To some, the roamer appears as a beautiful man or woman and brings with it an aura of ease, while to others, it appears as a beastly, snarling ape, standing several feet tall and brewing with anger behind its bright, red eyes. In either case, most feel the creature's presence before they see it, for better or worse. If you ever encounter the roamer, just hope you are famed as one who gives to nature rather than one who takes. The roamer is right up my alley. I love the idea of this beast that was, again, once like a protector, a guardian over nature, that now resorts to other means as people begin to disrespect nature more and more. With that being said, there's not a ton of information out there about it, and a lot of the descriptors around it are kind of vague, like, oh, it's a beautiful woman, or I guess sometimes also a man, and it looks like a big, like Bigfoot thing with red eyes, but also, and sometimes people will describe it as kind of like wolf-like or whatever. So because it's not clearly defined, I can't put it that high on the list, but I just like the idea of a creature that appears differently to different people, depending on the motivations of the person who encounters it. It is very spiritual in that aspect. So I'll call it a B tier. Next up, we've got the Boggy Creek Monster. Also known as the Folk Monster, between 1971 and 1974, Arkansas was filled with sightings of the creature. The monster holds a lot more in common with the skunk ape than most Bigfoot-adjacent cryptids, as it is described as a 7 to 10 foot tall, hairy humanoid with a foul stench, bright red eyes, and long, swinging arms. Reports of a large beast in the woods have been reported in the area as far back as 1851. However, following a series of sightings and even reported attacks in the 70s, the mania around the folk monster became so intense that local police began holding search parties, and a Little Rock news station set a bounty for evidence of the creature. Real or not, the legend of the Boggy Creek Monster won't be leaving anytime soon. The Boggy Creek Monster got that name nationally over the Folk Monster just because there was a documentary made about it called the Boggy Creek Monster, but most locals know it as the Folk Monster. Either way, it is once again a Bigfoot clone. That being said, it is a Bigfoot clone with a lot of hype around it. In the 70s, there was a story of a husband and wife who I believe the husband's brother was staying at the house with them, and he woke up on the couch to see the creature reaching through the window, trying to break inside. And there's a bunch of people who said their pets went missing. There were people who said that they ran into it on the road before it scampered off into the woods. It had a lot of mania around it, a lot of fun, and I do appreciate that. However, it is just a Bigfoot thing, so I'm going to call it... I want to call it D tier, but I'll give it grace because so many of the stories around it are fun, and I'll call it C tier. We are once again back to my personal favorite brand of crazy with another fearsome critter, the dingbat. Once again, we visit the tales of the fearsome critters for another, absolutely without question, terrifying monster. The dingbat is most like an owl, with the distinction of deer antlers that grow from its head. The dingbat is said to be so fast that it eats bullets out of mid-air and often drinks gasoline from the vehicles of hunters. This means that any related misfortune that befalls the hunter can be laid to the blame of the elusive dingbat. With a call that sounds like a horse and a propensity for mischief, it's not hard to see how the dingbat became the subject of many tall tales. Again, the stories write itself. A couple of guys are out hunting, and one of them shoots at an animal and misses and swears that he had to have hit it. His friend can just say, oh, well, a dingbat probably ate the bullet. They go back to the car and the car's out of gas. You can keep bothering him and say, oh, well, I guess the dingbat did it. Not to mention the dingbat looks so stupid in every picture. I love him so much. Again, one of my favorite things about cryptids is their capability of storytelling. And with something like the dingbat, it's hard to not imagine a story that comes with the creature. So I am immediately falling back to my old ways and putting this fearsome critter at A tier. After that, we have the physeter. The physeter is a massive sea monster that traces its origins to ancient mythologies. Its name translating to blower in Greek, it was described as a monster capable of rising out of the water and towering over any ships in its wake as it blows massive spouts of water from its mouth, hence the name. The physeter is expressly violent, hunting and destroying any ships unfortunate enough to find themselves in the hollowed waters. Given their impossible size and want for destruction, it's no surprise that many maps place depictions of the creature on its borders, warning sailors to never stray too far while at sea. I'm going to call the physeter a non-applicable because it's not really like a cryptid that anyone argues the legitimacy of. It's just a creature from old folklore, right? And the most legitimacy you could give it is that it was drawn on old maps. But that's more so to say, beware of what's out at the deep sea. That being said, the physeter is another example of humanity talking about ocean monsters for thousands of years. So either once again, we all decided to come up with it at the same time for some reason, or some of that fiction was based on fact. After that, we have an especially terrifying one, the El Cuero. The El Cuero is as unique as it is terrifying. Translating to the leather or the hide, initially, this monster appears just as that, a lone piece of dried skin or flesh lying along the riverside. That is, until a passerby is unfortunate enough to come near the creature. Then the El Cuero reveals its eyes that sit upon long stalks and massive teeth along its fringe before it drags its prey into the water. Reports of attacks by the creature are numerous, with onlookers claiming the beast to sweep victims off their feet and into the depths. Given the animals that exist in South American jungles and already confirmed species like that of the giant stingray, the stories of the El Cuero may be more fact than fiction. The El Cuero is a really cool monster design, in my opinion. Sure, it's essentially just a giant stingray, but something about the teeth and the long eyes and the fact it's camouflaged to look like a hide is just really cool. There's a lot of people who swear up and down this thing's real, and there is a solid case to be made that the giant stingray in the region is responsible for a lot of those sightings. But again, the creature rides this line between animals that do exist and being its own unique thing, that legends of it are certainly believable, at least to local cultures who have seen things like this before. And who's to say there's not a predatory stingray adjacent creature in the rivers of South America? There's certainly a ton of other stuff down there that wants to kill you. So I'm putting the El Cuero at B tier. Again, it is mostly a stingray, but also just the uniqueness to its design with things like the teeth and the eyes, to the plausibility of its existence, to the idea that it's just plain scary. I like it. And keeping with the theme of things in South America that want to kill you, we have giant ants. South America is home to the largest ant species in the world. These Amazonian ants can reach lengths of up to 1.5 inches. However, legend persists of isolated jungle species that far surpass this. Stories of giant ants are near worldwide. Famous among these stories is the legend of the golden ant. Ancient Greeks told tale of an ant species the size of cats that existed in the desert and filled its burrows with precious metals found deep beneath the sand, hence the name. Now, most rumors of man-eating ants arise from the jungles down south, with reports of specimens several inches long and in the millions per colony. Given the mystique of jungle life and the many disappearances associated with the wilderness, it's not hard to see why this legend is all too real for many. I feel like when I was a kid, there were so many different stories about giant ants in the jungle. Like, I remember seeing stuff about it on Animal Planet. Of course, there was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the scene of the guy, the Russian dude, I don't even remember his name, when the ants fill inside of his mouth and then drag them into the anthill. I had nightmares about that for months. But ants are terrifying creatures. We've all seen the way that they can pick apart a dead body, or even insects that are still alive and much larger than they are. So naturally the question is, how big do these things have to get for them to be a danger to us? And once again, if you are going to put a giant insect species that wants to kill you somewhere on the planet, the Amazon rainforest is a good candidate. I want to put the giant ants at C tier because I like the plausibility of them. I like the scariness factor of them, but I really can't. It's just a big ant. It's not even like a remarkable ant or anything, like a special ant. It is just an ant that is a little bit bigger than ants we already know about. So I'll call it D tier. Like, sure, it's scary and all, but I've got to draw my line somewhere. After that, we are back with another fearsome critter, my dearly beloved, with the Hugag. The Hugag is another of North America's fearsome critters. In the northern regions of North America, signs of the Hugag are a common occurrence. The animal is similar in size and shape to a moose, save for its long upper lip, lack of antlers, instead possessing long ears, lack of fur along its head and shoulders, and most notably, the Hugag does not have any knees. Because of this, the animal cannot bend or lie down and instead must eat what little bark or twigs it can tear off of trees with its long lip. This makes the Hugag hard to track as it will cover dozens of miles every day in search of food. The Hugag must sleep standing up and often bends the trees it lies against. Therefore, to catch one, hunters cut notches out of trees in the Hugag's perceived path, hoping that the creature will break a tree, fall over, and then be apprehended. As with most fearsome critters, the Hugag allows a new way of perceiving the natural world. As with the legend in mind, something as simple as a bent tree becomes extraordinary. If no one else got me, I know the fearsome critters got me, because as with all the others, I love this. Walking through the Appalachian woods, there's plenty of times that you'll just see a tree that is slightly bent for some reason, and typically you don't think anything of it. But with this legend in mind, it might as well be the sleeping place of a Hugag. And the idea that people who want to hunt one have to guess 20 miles ahead of its last seen tracks what tree it might lie up next against, and then just cut down pieces of the bark from all the trees in the area, that's so fun. You could also make it a sort of snipe hunt. If there's someone you're looking to haze in a group, you can tell them that a Hugag is coming by soon, so they need to get started on cutting little pieces out of all the trees in the region right now. I am going to taper myself and put the Hugag at B tier, because while it is fun in a practical sense, there's not a ton of stories that I think can be made with it, as well as just the creature itself is not that unique. Again, the whole bent tree part is fun, but it's not as special as the dingbat, for example. So I'll call it B tier, but just know it's like a B+, a B with love. It does make me happy that most of the cryptids lately have been above C tier, because obviously I like cryptids, so I like seeing the cool ones, and B tier is relatively full compared to D and F. So that's pretty nice. Next up, we have the Yukon giant worm. Also known as the Guh, spelled G-U-H. It is, as the name describes, a giant worm found in the Yukon Territory of Canada. These worms wreak havoc on the local flora and can take out entire ecosystems with their voracious appetite of the surrounding plant life. They are said to live in holes burrowed deep underground and are rarely seen aside from their aftermath. The stories of this massive worm originate with the Taku-he people, and sightings are few, yet notorious in the Canadian wilderness. So on the one hand, yes, Yukon giant worm. It is just big worm that doesn't even attack people, it just eats plants and stuff like that. Which is kind of cool, I guess, but not that terrifying or interesting compared to a lot of the other cryptids. However, the fact that puts it a little bit ahead of stuff like the giant ants to me is that it has relevance to the local native people and legends they have. There's a lot of fun stories that were made in original publications about the creature involving things like people shooting at it and the creature getting away. So there's a bit more chance for stories. There's a bit more culture tied to it than just the idea of what if there are big ants in the jungle. So I'll bump it up a little bit and call it a C tier, even if at the end of the day it is just big worm. After that, we've got the Ozark howler. The howler is a feared beast said to stalk the Ozark region of Arkansas. Described as a large bear-cougar hybrid with the distinction of prominent horns, sightings of the howler are recorded back in the 1950s, with several claiming the folklore to be much older. The howler gets its name from one of its most distinct characteristics, its howl. Most often described as a combination between an elk's and wolf's call, some say that the scream of the howler resembles that of a woman, a carryover from the creature's cougar features. Blamed for many dead cattle and even a few missing persons cases, the howler legend will continue to stalk the hills of Arkansas for many years to come. The howler's shape is a little bit unique. Again, it's just like take an animal and another animal and there you go. But I like the horns. I like the idea that it like screeches into the night. Sure, the whole it screams and sounds like a woman is just a mountain lion thing, like everyone knows that at this point. The idea of it being kind of like an elk-wolf hybrid in its call is pretty unique. And there's so many stories about the howler. It's been adapted into a ton of different media, so the culture is certainly there with it. Even though I kind of want to put it C tier, it is popular enough that I feel like it deserves a little bit of credit for that, so I'll call it a B tier. After that, we have the AOW Abomination, which sounds like a supervillain, but stay with me. The Atlantic Ocean winged abomination was spotted one time in 2004. In a story that deserves its own attention, 82 people left for Puerto Rico from the Dominican Republic aboard a raft before being swept out to sea for 12 days, of which only 37 survived. Amid a nightmare containing cannibalism and self-sacrifices at sea, the beast appeared. According to the survivors, a massive winged beast appeared in the sky with the wings of a bat and an exposed skull of a human. The survivors took to reading a copy of the Bible out loud, but as they did, the pages vanished from their hands. This demonic sky beast is a fascinating legend whose terror is as apparent as its story is brief. I, for some reason, really like this thing, and I don't know why. Objectively, I can fully identify this is entirely just a hallucination. Like, it was only seen one time, there's no lore around it. A group of people who were already in an incredible distressing circumstance all of a sudden see this one demonic entity that kind of shows up for a bit, and then supposedly the Bibles that were in their hand disappeared, and then the creature just kind of flies off or disappears and goes away. Almost certainly just like hallucinatory, right? But I don't know, there's something I like about just the cryptid idea of a thing that was only seen once and it came to people in the absolute worst moment of their life is almost like a harbinger of some doom to come. And it's explicitly demonic. It turns away from, any Christian thing like the Bible and it makes it disappear. It's just a cool thought, even if I can't really classify it as a cryptid that hard. I still found it on a cryptid search list, so fight me about it. So while I want to put it higher, I also acknowledge that a thing that was seen one time and not really described and kind of like transient in itself, I'm going to call it C tier, which means I have to kill my wife's crab. I'm so sorry, but you're going to heaven. Even if the AOW Abomination, for one, the name's just cool, but even if it's more of like a demonic sighting than any kind of cryptid sighting, like I said, it's on the board, too late to turn back now. After that, we have the Orang-bati. Originating in Southeast Asia, this cryptid is, as the name implies, the hybrid of an orangutan and a bat. It is said to terrorize the villages of Indonesia at night, swooping down with loud wails and carrying off children to their death. It is said to inhabit deep holes within neighboring mountains during the day and takes to the skies at night. In 1987, an English missionary named Tyson Hughes was initially skeptical of the legend before supposedly encountering one himself. This event compelling Hughes to chronicle many local narratives of the creature and bringing them to the world at large. So the Orang-bati is very prevalent around the area of Indonesia. There's a lot of stories about it, a lot of people that are scared of it, a lot of stories of it kidnapping children and infants. And it's very interesting that a missionary, someone from outside of the culture, comes to the region and becomes a believer of it too. It further lends validity to this creature. That being said, it is a monkey bat, and there's not a lot I can do with that. And like that, the story is just like it is a really big bat that kind of looks like a monkey, and it kidnaps kids. So it's not that interesting of a creature, and it doesn't do anything that unique. And sure, a lot of people see it, but it's like a lot of people see a lot of things. It doesn't mean they're cool. So I'm going to call it D tier. I'm just really getting fatigued of all of the primate adjacent creatures. Everything is half monkey or monkey hybrid or ape or gorilla or whatever. It's all just like right in that circle, and it's all boring to me. But if you thought that made me mad, let's move on to the last cryptid of tier 7, the Bear Lake Monster. In the Bear Lake of northern Utah legend of a mega predator has existed for over a century. Somewhere between a crocodile and mosasaur, the monster was first reported by Joseph C. Rich in newspaper articles, and from there, sightings only grew in number. Some have claimed to witness the creature hurl itself onto shore in an attempt to catch any passerby, while others have claimed to see the beast attack boats, merely floating on the water. These same witnesses report the beast to measure 40 feet in length, and given its matching aggression, it's no wonder as to why this cryptid is the terror of Bear Lake. Also, according to the lake's website, the monster's name is Isabella. Okay, so it's kind of like mosasaur with the jaw shape and everything, and it's got legs, so it's like kind of crocodilian and looks scaly. So that's all fine until you look at a lot of people's drawings of it, and it looks a lot like the Loch Ness Monster, and we all know how I feel about that. So I want to put this at F tier, and I was thinking about it. Even though it's not explicitly a Loch Ness Monster, it's close enough to make me angry. And then I was reading on the website, and I saw that they had a competition at a local elementary school, and the kids voted to name it Isabella. And that's really cute, and I can't bring myself to put it at F tier. So it's going at D tier. I'm still mad that's just another copy-paste design, but it being Isabella brings it up just enough to become a D-. Like, if you live in the region, I'm sure it's very cool, woohoo, you have your own lake monster, but I've got news for you. There's like 100 other lakes in the United States that all have the exact same monster. You're not special. I'm sorry that your parents lied to you. Anyway, with that out of the way, we are now done with Tier 7 of the Cryptid Iceberg. Thank you all so much for watching this far. If you have, I apologize for the wait. Like I said, wanted to see people catch up with the series. I kind of want to do something different because the views for this aren't great, which I don't care about in a vacuum, but that kind of tells me that people aren't as interested in this as they are other videos. So maybe I need to record a couple of these and then release them at the same time as, one video. Obviously the compilation will come eventually. But I don't know, maybe something to mix it up a bit just to get more people interested. Or, you know what, if no more people are interested in those that are watching right now, that's totally fine by me. I hope you all had a good time, because I know I'm certainly having a good time. I'm gonna finish the Iceberg even if no one's watching, because I care. But no, I appreciate you guys so much for the support. Thank you for your patience. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, there will be a video about the fearsome critters very soon because I can't help myself. I ordered the book, so when that comes in, we're gonna get to it. It'll probably just be a story time video, but you all would probably like that for some reason. But anyway, I'm going to get working on this so that you all can see it. Thank you all so much for the support. Thank you all so much for the support on everything from the movie tour. That was fantastic. The support on merchandise lately, that's been incredible. Just everything that I've done, you guys have been a blessing with. So thank you all so much for that. So I'm going to go ahead and get working on this. I believe that should do it for now, but I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!